The second week of Roland Garros was a tale of brilliance and controversy, but most importantly, history was made. As we pack our bags to prepare for the grass court season, now is the best time to relive the insane drama that went down at the French Open last week. Enormous upsets, 5-set thrillers, even stomach bugs joined in on the action. Week 2 of the French Open definitely taught us some lessons. Here's everything that happened in tennis this week. But before we get into it, I have to mention that we just dropped our very first episode of Courtside Tennis, where we got some exclusive access to some of the best players on the WTA Tour, including Alina Svitolina, Anna Bogdan, and we even got some commentary from Murphy Jensen too. Be sure to check it out if you missed it. It's the dawn of a new era. Jannik Sinner is the first Italian man in history to become world number 1. Really, it's been a long time coming for the Fox. With the Big Four spending a combined total of 19 years atop the rankings, we're probably close to the end of an era, if we're not already there yet. Sinner faced Dimitrov in the quarterfinal, and it was one-way traffic for a large part of the match. The Bulgarian's variety proved once again to be no match for Sinner's brute force and brilliance from the baseline. After he took the first set 6-2, Sinner continued to pounce on Dimitrov like it was personal. Here's how he broke him early on in the second set. That single break was enough to get the job done for Sinner as he held on to take the second set. To his credit, Dimitrov refused to go away. Despite going down a break again in the third, Dimitrov finally broke Sinner when the Italian was serving for the match. However, the Bulgarian would fall just short, and it was Sinner who won the tiebreak. Of course, these highlights don't do much justice because the match was full of long rallies and crazy shots. But at the end of the day, Sinner was just too good for his opponents. As expected, Dimitrov's slices weren't as effective as they would be on other surfaces, so Sinner was able to dictate rallies off of them. Sinner also neutralized Dimitrov's deadly serve +1 combo with some ridiculous returning. And I have to mention, Dimitrov made 49 unforced errors, but no doubt Dimitrov would have been proud of his performance at the tournament overall. The Italian faced Alcaraz in the semis in what was the most anticipated match of the tournament. Legends like 3-time Grand Slam champ Guga Kurten were in the stands to witness another historic chapter in the Sinner-Alcaraz rivalry. With the head-to-head tied at 4-all, we were witnessing another chapter of a rivalry that's going to potentially shape the future of tennis. Sinner ended up falling to Alcaraz in a roller coaster 5-set thriller in the semis, and let's just say it wasn't the video game tennis which we're often used to seeing from both players. Anyway, I did a breakdown of that match in another video, which will also be dropping soon. Despite the semifinal disappointment for Sinner, he still ascends to take the number 1 spot with Novak Djokovic pulling out of the tournament because of his knee injury. By the way, Sinner is now 33-3 in 2024, and just take a look at his season at a glance. Just like Sinner, Alcaraz also entered Roland Garros with big question marks around his health, having missed Rome with a forearm issue. But by the time he faced Tsitsipas in the quarterfinal, those doubts were emphatically put to rest, as Alcaraz dismantled Tsitsipas in straight sets. However, one of the major talking points in that match had to do with Tsitsipas's complaint about Alcaraz's grunts. Do you think Tsitsipas had a valid point that those grunts were actually putting him off, or was it just the frustration? Personally, I could see where Steph was coming from. And also from the clip, we see Alcaraz laughing as he walks past the umpire's chair, which means he also knew what was up. What were your thoughts about the whole situation? With Alcaraz coming from 2-1 down to beat Sinner in the semis, we switched focus to the other half of the draw, where we had another blockbuster clash on our hands between Zverev and Casper Ruud. With Nole out of the tournament with that knee injury, Ruud had a free pass to the semis. He even had some extra time to practice his golf swing ahead of his semifinal match against Sasha, who was into his 4th consecutive Roland Garros semifinal. Facing a familiar opponent at the same stage for the 2nd year in a row, Ruud came out swinging early as he fired those forehands. He was also mixing up the pace to disrupt Sasha's rhythm. But after what was a brilliant first set, Ruud began to slow down, and later on, we would find out that he was dealing with a stomach bug, and in fact he was even taking medication. With Sasha cranking up the engine, Ruud was no match for the German. Sasha went on to win the match in 4 sets, but not before he produced one of the shots of the tournament. After the match, Ruud said this about Zverev's game.
He has everything that you need to play good clay court tennis, I would say.
With that, the stage for the final was set. Alcaraz versus Zverev. Zverev had the lead in their head-to-head at 5-4 and had won their only meeting at Roland Garros in 2022. Both players were in top form, and we witnessed a roller coaster final with wild swings in momentum across each set as the match went the distance. Sasha ended up fading away in the final set and had this to say after the match.
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel like I did everything I could today.
I've made a separate video about Carlitos' title run, including analysis of the final and my takes on some of the controversial moments too. It'll be dropping soon. But we also need to talk about one of the top guys that's been flying under the radar. Alex de Minaur beat Medvedev in the 4th round as he reached his second Grand Slam quarterfinal. Personally, I didn't have Medvedev among my favorites for the title. I mean, he hasn't won a title in like a year and was obviously playing on his worst surface. However, nothing changes the fact that de Minaur's win was impressive. The Aussie had never been past the 2nd round at Roland Garros, but we've seen him improve his game on clay earlier in the season, and he's added a lot more weight to his shots. After losing the first set, de Minaur began playing out of his mind with super deep returns to trouble Medvedev, and here's how he drew level. De Minaur served the Russian a breadstick in the 3rd set before showcasing his durability to put the match beyond Medvedev's reach with this beautiful piece of play right here. Medvedev then self-destructed with a double fault in what was a pretty anticlimactic fashion. Throughout the match, de Minaur employed a really smart strategy, hitting balls down the middle, not giving Daniil many angles to work with. De Minaur has improved so much over the last year, and I think his improvement doesn't get talked about as much. With the win, he secures his 5th top 10 win of the year, tying Sinner and Dimitrov for most top 10 wins this season. He also became the first Australian man to reach the Roland Garros quarterfinals in 20 years. Unfortunately, he couldn't get past an in-form Zverev in the quarterfinal. But when we checked in on the women's tour, we saw Sabalenka and Rybakina in unfamiliar situations. Sabalenka faced Mira Andreeva in the quarterfinal and looked to be on course for another victory until the 17-year-old turned the match on its head. She withstood Sabalenka's power to draw level in the 2nd set. Both players exchanged breaks in the 3rd set until Mira snatched the match from Sabalenka at the death with this beautiful lob right here. It was the biggest upset of the tournament as Andreeva became the youngest woman to reach a Grand Slam semifinal since Martina Hingis in 1997. Taking nothing away from Andreeva's win, Sabalenka looked sick during the match and was unable to attend her post-match press conference after. But the same couldn't be said about Rybakina when she faced Jasmine Paolini. Paolini exposed Rybakina's movement early on, creating sharp angles on the forehand cross-court exchanges. And with the 3rd set dead even at 4-all, Rybakina made this costly error to give Paolini the lead. The Italian never looked back as she stuns the world number 4. As a result of her superior movement and footwork, Paolini won twice the number of points in rallies between 5 to 8 shots. Rybakina won't also be too pleased with the 48 unforced errors she made in the match. Now, Rybakina, who happens to be one of the best servers on the WTA Tour, also only had a measly 38% win percentage on her 2nd serve and only 59% on her 1st serve. It's one thing you sometimes see with Rybakina. When she's having an off day on her serve, you just know it's going to be a really difficult match for her. On the other side of the draw, we saw Coco Gauff come from a set down to beat Ons Jabeur in the quarterfinal to reach the last 4 for the 2nd time at Roland Garros. Early on, Jabeur was making the highlight reels with shots like this. One set away from defeat, Coco showed why she's one of the best returners in the world as she came alive. Meanwhile, On's level continued to drop, and the final point of the match just tells you how bad it really got. When Coco faced Iga in the semis, we knew that there could only be one winner. Iga beat the American in straight sets to extend her lead to 11-1 in their head-to-head. Coco's forehand, which is the usual culprit, was spraying a lot of errors against Iga. And you can't really blame Gauff for trying to be aggressive at times. It was literally her only option. Gauff would then have a contentious moment with the umpire and state after the match that she wanted VAR in tennis. Do you think she has a point? But despite the disappointment, Coco will be proud of herself for winning the Roland Garros doubles title with Katerina Siniakova. Paolini booked her ticket to the final after beating Mira Andreeva 6-3, 6-1 in the semis. Coming into the match, we already knew that Paolini wasn't a great server. Standing at only 5 feet 4 inches tall, or 1.63 meters, Paolini has always been at a disadvantage from a height perspective. The average ace rate on the WTA Tour is 4.2%, and Paolini, by comparison, only 1.6%. Now, that's way below the Tour average, and we saw that play out in the match against Iga. Although Paolini got off to a great start and even broke Iga to take a 2-1 lead in the first set, the rest of the match almost looked like a formality as Iga completely annihilated Paolini. Iga morphed into a destroyer of serves, unleashing the most ridiculous return winners you'll ever see. Knowing that she couldn't get any free points off her serve, Paolini only had the option of getting the better of Iga from the baseline, but unfortunately, she was also up against the best returner on the women's tour. Capitalizing on Paolini's lack of length on the wings, Swiatek started to push Paolini from side to side as the match went on. Swiatek raced away with the first set, bringing the set to a close with this deep return right at Paolini's feet. Jasmine could only manage a disastrous 28% win percent on her first serve in the first set. That figure improved to 39% in the second set, with also slightly better metrics on the second serve. Meanwhile, Iga was sitting around 70% on both first and second serves. But in the end, nothing could hide the fact that we were witnessing utter domination from Iga. It was rinse and repeat as Iga continued to cash in on those return winners. We already know that Iga's forehand is the heaviest shot on the WTA Tour, so you can imagine how those balls would have been bouncing so high and going away from Paolini's strike zone in the final. Let's just say Paolini got thoroughly outplayed, but it was nice to see that she never gave up until the end, trying to be aggressive whenever she could. That in itself only led to more errors, especially on the backhand cross-court. However, when you're up against someone who's on her way to becoming the greatest clay court player ever on the WTA Tour, there's really little you can do. In the end, a 6-2, 6-1 scoreline in 68 minutes. Paolini won only one game after getting that early break at 2-1 in the first set. What in the world? I told you guys in that Iga video I made a few weeks back that she was literally a walking cheat code on clay, and that with the way that she smothers opponents, there was no doubt that she could win the Madrid, Rome, Roland Garros Triple Crown. Here's what Paolini had to say after the match.
I never played a player that has this intensity before in my life. I think it was the most challenging match I played in my entire career.
But to think that Swiatek was only 1 point away from defeat in that second round match against Naomi Osaka should make her appreciate the title win a little more. Iga dropped a total of 17 games against Osaka, while she only dropped 20 games against all other players she played at the French Open combined. Yeah, so she totally did struggle against Osaka and looked more vulnerable than ever on her surface. However, for those of you saying Iga is only untouchable on clay, I would argue that she's on her way to doing great things on grass. Now, maybe I might be getting a little ahead of myself, but I reckon she will make a deep run at Wimbledon this time, nothing short of a semi-final appearance. But let me ask you guys instead, how far do you see Iga going on grass this year? Here's what she thinks herself.
I feel like every year it's easier for me to adapt to grass.
In the meantime, we also need to remind ourselves of just what Iga has done. 5 Grand Slams at 23 years old. She's the first player to win 3 consecutive Roland Garros titles since Justine Henin between 2005 and 2007. In fact, it's been 1,096 days since Swiatek lost a match at Roland Garros. Swiatek is only the 3rd player to win her first 5 Grand Slam finals. And the best of the bunch, Swiatek is the only woman ever to win Roland Garros 4 times before turning 24. For Paolini, she has every reason to be proud of what she's achieved so far, and she's really becoming a threat this season. Paolini started the year as world number 30, and at 28 years old, she had never made it past the second round at any Grand Slam. That was until she reached the 4th round at the Australian Open. She then clinched her first WTA 1000 title in Dubai, and now a French Open final appearance. Paolini becomes the 3rd Italian woman in the Open era to reach a Roland Garros final after Francesca Schiavone and Sara Errani. For someone who said she never used to dream big, Paolini will certainly be proud of everything she's achieved. Remember, she's also beaten some of the best servers on tour despite not being known for her serve, including Rybakina twice, Sabalenka, and also Caroline Garcia, all of whom are exceptional servers. Apart from Paolini's fighting spirit, her contagious smile is another thing we always love and appreciate about her. As far as ranking updates go, it's going to be quite a shakeup. On the men's side, Novak Djokovic falls to the number 3 spot as he gets passed by Sinner and newly crowned Roland Garros champion Alcaraz. Alex de Minaur returns to the top 10 after reaching the quarterfinals, while Tsitsipas drops out of the top 10 for now. Holger Rune is now down to world number 15. Hopefully he gets a big result soon. Karen Khachanov drops outside the top 20 following his second round upset against Kovalik. Meanwhile, Corentin Moutet takes a giant leap and moves up 23 spots. He now has the chance to break into the top 50 for the very first time in his career. Elsewhere, Zizou Bears finds himself inside the top 100 for the first time. However, Andy Murray slides 22 spots down and is now at risk of falling outside the top 100. On the women's side, Iga Swiatek puts more daylight between herself and her rivals. However, Coco Gauff leapfrogs Sabalenka as she reaches a new career high of world number 2. Quite an achievement for the American, who's the youngest player inside the top 20. Meanwhile, Marketa Vondrushova reaches a new career high at number 5 after making the quarterfinals. But a certain Italian grabbed all the headlines. Although she was no match for Swiatek in the Roland Garros final, Jasmine Paolini created more history by becoming the 5th Italian to reach the WTA top 10 after moving 8 spots up. Now currently occupying the 7th spot, Paolini has no points to defend at Wimbledon, so we could see her climb even higher. Emma Navarro continues to climb up the ladder, and we could say the same thing for 17-year-old Mira Andreeva, who's now on the verge of breaking into the top 20. Karolina Muchova loses her finalist points from last year and slides down the ranking, while we see some significant moves from Sofia Kenin and Anna Bogdan. Katie Volynets is one of the biggest movers of the week, and same for Olga Danilovic, who had an impressive French Open run herself. But it gets more interesting when you look at how the WTA finals race is shaping up. Iga has already booked her ticket to the final, while Paolini is now up to the number 5 spot. Mira Andreeva puts herself in the finals conversation after gaining ground on the other players. While we recover from the highs of Roland Garros, we have a couple of 250s on both tours to help us cool off. I'm not going to be doing a recap of the tournaments this week, but no worries guys, I will be sending you some insights through the newsletter. So if you're not subscribed yet, now would be the time to do so. I'll leave the link in the description. We have some popcorn matches in the first round in Stuttgart. Oh, here's the draw on the screen. Shelton looks to begin his campaign on the grass, while Sasha Bublik, who won the biggest title of his career on grass last year in Halle, will be counting on his serve for more success here. Our man Francis Tiafoe will also be looking to rediscover some form as well. The results of the Sertagenbosch ATP 250 draw came out over the weekend, and here's what it looks like. Alex de Minaur is the top seed, with second seed Tommy Paul on the other half of the draw. Paul hasn't had the best results at this tournament, with early round exits in the last couple years. Ugo Humbert, Karen Khachanov, Griekspoor, and Korda are all seeded, so there are some big names in there for sure. Also, next-gen ATP stars Artur Fils and Jakub Menchik look to also compete in Sertagenbosch too. Fils is yet to get his first tour-level win on the surface, and Menchik hasn't even played an ATP match on grass. This year's Sertagenbosch tournament got a big boost on the women's side when former world number 1 Naomi Osaka accepted a wildcard to start her grass court season. Now, it's Naomi's first grass event in about 5 years. She'll be looking to adapt quickly on the grass in a bid to get past the 3rd round of Wimbledon for the first time in her career. Jessica Pegula is also looking to return to action as the top seed in the event. Other big names to look forward to are 2-time champion Ekaterina Alexandrova, Bianca Andreescu, and Emma Navarro. Elsewhere, Ons Jabeur headlines the entry list as the top seed at the Rothesay Open in Nottingham. We also have Marta Kostyuk and last year's winner Katie Boulter as the 2nd and 3rd seeds respectively. Meanwhile, former US Open champ Emma Raducanu has also accepted a wild card. Raducanu withdrew from Roland Garros qualifying in order to focus on the grass and hard court swings, so we have a couple of interesting storylines at play in Nottingham. We now know that Danielle Collins is now confirmed in the lineup for the USA's women's Olympic team. I couldn't be happier for her. It's been one hell of a ride for Collins, and this is just the cherry on top for her. Meanwhile, all hands were on deck to keep Roger Federer away from grass. And when we finally did, Roger then went on to give this iconic speech.
I just came here to give a speech, but I get to go home as Dr. Roger.
But perhaps the biggest news off court last week was the update on Sasha Zverev's court case. The domestic abuse case was dropped, and Sasha reiterated his innocence and the fact that he never wanted to hear of it again. Here's some part of the press release. The 2024 French Open shattered the ceiling of expectations for many of us fans, and the grass court season is shaping up to be just as crazy. If you love what we're doing on the channel, be sure to smash that subscribe button, and as usual, if you missed out on last week's videos, no worries, I've got them showing on the screen for you right here.